Fans of the movie, please hear me out first and stay with me at least until my number 5 yay before stopping the video. But the movie is, by objective standards, not a good movie. Wait, something's off. Oh right, this page is from a review of the original movie. Silly me. Now here is the right page. Equestria Girls Rainbow Rocks is, by objective standards, not a bad movie. It's actually rather good. Well, apparently everybody is already loving the movie to bits. Thank Luna for the grumpy old German dude who put it on himself to deliver a balanced view by finding at least 5 bad things to nag about, no matter how much he actually likes the topic at hand. Of course, I also collected 5 good things to praise to high heavens. But first of all, let's warm up a bit with number 2, meh. I am still not a big fan of the entire balloon head, stick figure, everybody has a skin disease and don't you dare to wear pants girls art design. But it is what they picked for that franchise and continuing to get worked up about it is pointless. It is as superficial as it gets, and even if the style itself should never grow on you, you should not allow it to spoil the entire franchise for you. Also, we got a few more pants this time around. Number 1, meh. You heard me groan and complain about it during the Rainbow Rocks shorts, and the magical mutations were pretty much a safe bet for my Neigh list. But then something unexpected happened. The movie does not only directly address the freakishness of the transformations, but makes the fact that this happens and what it implies a big and meaningful plot point for the story. I still call horse apples on how casual everybody is with all the magical stuff happening in a world in which, as it is once again explicitly confirmed during the movie, magic does not exist. However, I can't really stay mad about it considering how they turned that flaw into a strength. Number 5.
Neigh!
I admit, this first one is a bit speculative, not really a big issue, and you could even say that it only made the list because I needed a 5th Neigh and was running out of ideas. Nevertheless, I am a bit miffed about the fact that, contrary to what we have been told in the context of the first movie, it now looks like the Equestria Girls series, Equestria Academy, is going to be closely tied to the original show, with Twilight now being able to pop in whenever she wants thanks to the improved portal, and with Sunset writing the newest incarnation of the Friendship Report to Pony Princess. You wanna know what is a bit ironic about this complaint of mine? At the time of the first movie, I didn't want Equestria Girls to be too close to MLP because I wanted to be able to see it as its own separate silly entity I can enjoy as a guilty pleasure without having to consider it canon to the original show. Now, I don't want it to be too closely tied to MLP because I want to see it become its own independent thing without constantly relying on its big sister. A crossover every now and then is cool. However, Torchwood didn't need the Doctor to pop in every other episode. Pinky and the Brain worked even better being separated from the AnYPony's, and Angel was pretty capable of running his agency without Buffy lurking over his shoulder 24/7. But yeah, just a speculative nitpick of stuff that wasn't even in the movie. Number 5.
Yay!
Some call it fan pandering, some call it distracting. I call it, look at all this stuff! There is vinyl from music into my ears, there is Octavia and she speaks! Look, the CNC doing his showstopper again! And... Seriously though. There is so much happening, so many small details, so much to discover. It is not Gravity Falls levels of watching it 100th time and still discovering something new in the background, but it most certainly goes into that direction. Just look at all the ideas and details poured into all the competing bands, even if we only get to see them in action for the blink of an eye. Or subtle details like Twilight constantly curling up her hands into a more hoof-like shape whenever she is in distress. True, Maud's cameo was probably a bit confusing for everybody who is not familiar with the particular episode of MLP. However, Mega managed that even those short moments featuring pandas contribute to either the setting or, in this case, the plot. It gives Twilight and Sunset something to bond over. And last but not least, we got our first confirmed canon gay couple. Number 4.
Neigh!
I have a few issues with everybody's new favorite Equestria Girls villains. Not that the competition in that particular field had set the bar very high in the past. The Dazzlings are more or less like internet trolls. Just think about it. They just pop in with the mere goal to cause disharmony and feed on the resulting misery until they get banned. Just as the Dazzlings use music instead of bad grammar. Talking about the banning. Starford the Bearded? Seriously? Yes, it is kind of refreshing that somebody else than the royal sisters got stuff done 1,000 years ago, but by now Starford became the writer's regular go-to stallion. You know, with the royal sisters being immortal and everything, you can still imagine all their achievements being spread out over a century or two. When I first heard the Starford is Discord theory, I was intrigued back in the day. However, I also came across an interesting counter-argument. Connecting everything together like this makes the world smaller. And that's what is happening here. Not to mention that it makes the character more unbelievable. I overlooked it in my Twilight Kingdoms review. But just one season's final ago we learned that despite he being not able to really understand friendship as stated in Magic and Mystery Cure, he was able to befriend and convert a demonic entity that was about to take over Equestria. Something not even our favorite princess of friendship could accomplish herself and let Fluttershy take over. Then again, Fluttershy used the friendship to blackmail Discord into obedience. What was his name supposed to be about again? Number 4.
Yay!
Well, after all those nitpicks about Starswell, after all that constructive criticism about the Dazzlings, I also wanted to point out that they are overall good villains. Not great, but good. They have been rather competent and thrusting throughout the movie, and they really only lost because, well, the other side has been stronger. Character-wise, they are not going to take home the grand prize of most imaginative villain ever, but they deliver a solid performance of a classic villain trio, the boss, the snarky, the comic relief. Even though Avatar pulled it off better. Then again, what didn't Avatar do better than most other series? This show is god tier. However, their outworldly siren tunes have been pretty amazing and memorable, pushing them from mediocre villains to good. Once again, Daniel Ingram saved the day. What I personally enjoy the most about the Dazzlings is that they are yet another callback to G1. Wait, you didn't see that? Just take a closer look. They sing a lot, and their original forms resemble... Okay, I stop it. But the MLP equivalent of the Rickroll aside, I believe there might actually be something to my theory. Number 3.
Neigh!
I can't believe that one made it so high up on my Neigh list again. But the previous Neighs have just been so minor. Anyways, the quote-unquote romance between Flash Sentry and Twilight gets resumed. I mean, seriously guys, I found the shipping in Xenophilia less mind-boggling. Interesting. Now that I think about it, there are certain similarities between those two ships. But I already talked about Xenophilia in length in my review of the fiction, and about the awkwardness of Flashlight in my previous Equestria Girls top list. On a positive note though, while the bumping into each other motive gets continued, overall Flash feels like an organic part of the world now and not like some surreal pasted-in love interest. He has actually been allowed to grow a bit of a personality. A surprisingly quirky and goofy personality considering his otherwise cool guy design, but a personality nonetheless. Number 3.
Yay!
The narrative. One of the biggest flaws of the first movie was a story so cluttered with plot holes, pointless scenes, contrivances and outright stupid actions by main characters, good guys as well as bad guys, that you either had to completely disregard it altogether, like me or people who simply don't care about a good narrative, or you ended up creating a 50-minute rant obliterating every single inconsistency in it, Tommy Oliver style. This time around the story is solid, cohesive and has no absolutely pointless out of nowhere and resolve within a minute threats in it. Instead, we get epic moments like this.
Friendship is magic!
Yeah, bad example. Let's put it like this. It's not perfect and still has its fair share of painful to watch scenes. But for every scene of social suicide, we also get an epic moment, like the riling up of the masses. The movie starts literally where its predecessor left. It deals with the direct consequences of the events that went down and builds upon them. The focus is now truly on the human world. We start with humans, we end with humans, and we only see ponies for about 5 minutes, 20 minutes into the movie. That focus helps the story very well. The entire setup with the sirens as well as the Sunset's diary worked and was believable within the context of the MLP universe. Yes, I heard the complaints that the lucky coincidence by which Twilight discovers the buzzing book was contrived as hell, and I agree, but in the end it was just a shortcut through a more natural flow of events like book buzzing in Canterlot, librarian discovers it, tells Celestia, Celestia sends book to Twilight. Could have been done better, but did not actually harm the overall story. Talking about. Even though Twilight was not the main focus of the story, she got to learn some really important stuff that, let's face it, addresses an aspect of the show that really needed it. Twilight does not have to have all the answer. Especially since she grew a pair of wings, she became the #1 problem solver and answer provider of the show. It is a good reminder that she is still allowed to fail like everybody else. Number 2.
Neigh!
Well, hello again. Haven't I talked about you before as well? Yep, another returning issue from the original list. The high school setting. Unlike my recurrent complaints about the design style during the math section, this one is not just a cosmetic issue but an integral part of the entire setup. In an interesting difference to my previous top list, last time it ended up on the bottom of my Neigh list because it was, as I already mentioned in regards to the narrative, a matter of either shrugging it off or going nuts about it. I went with the former since I considered the movie beyond saving anyways and had bigger issues to talk about. Now, for one, we have a good movie at our hands, what makes its flaws stick out more, and in addition, Rainbow Rocks simply left me with less strong points to pick on, so this issue became more prominent in relation. Now, where did the high school setup handicap the story this time? Luna's and Celestia's counterparts in the human world are weaker than ever. It's like principals are not a good representation of wise immortal demigods. Or that one. How are we supposed to understand the Deathling's age? Starsworld's involvement in their banishment allows us to pin this event at the usual action-packed era about 1,000 years ago. Now, even if we take into consideration that the time might flow differently between Equestria and the human world, it is safe to assume that the Deathlings are quite a bit older than their appearance suggests. So they are immortals roaming the planet for ages, being stuck in eternal adolescence, including all the typical attitudes of that age group? And where does this leave them at the end of the movie? To be fair, we also got scenes we all wanted to see even though we didn't know it. The slumber party is just a joy to watch. AJ versus Dashi on the console, Rarity taking selfies, and Pinky hanging out on social media. This is what I call a well put together, fitting representation of the main 6 as human teenagers. Number 2.
Yay!
This one goes along with pretty much all the good stuff I already had to say. Rainbow Rocks improves over Equestria Girls on nearly all ends. I already talked about the writing, the villains, the attention to detail, the flow, the setup, and even Flash Sentry. It goes on with expected improvements like better, smoother and more impressive animations. After all, they could build upon the resources from the first movie. And finally, the soundtrack. Those aren't the no risk taking, easy to like but also easy to forget pop songs from part 1. We have music with character that actually expresses something, like the mysticism of the Deathlings or the energy of the acts on stage. Well, I said improved on nearly all ends. What brings me to my only real issue I have with Rainbow Rocks. Number 1.
Neigh!
The majority of our protagonists came off weak. And not only in the too little screen time to get something meaningful to contribute sense of weak, pushing some of the characters a bit to the background to provide space for the ones the medium is focusing on is completely fine. A movie is only so long and you simply can't give everybody the full attention. Applejack, Fluttershy and Pinkie Pie have been handled that way and they did just fine. Spike hasn't gotten a real bad part neither, but it makes me a bit sad on a personal level to see my highlight of the first movie not contributing anything meaningful to the movie at all, except maybe this one funny joke with the photobomb and the fact that he constantly puts pressure on Twilight in order to establish her arc. Talking about Twilight, as I already said, it was interesting seeing her having her own arc while not being the center of the story, but her level of cluelessness felt a bit overwhelming at times. For crying out loud, Twilight, just ask Sunset to help. Haven't you wrote at least about 3 friendship reports about the topic of accepting help and stubbornness by now? One that really didn't sit well with me was Rarity. Reducing her to that one-note character that constantly only talks about dresses? What is this? Pre-Suited for Success Season 1 Rarity? And it's not like she talks a lot about dresses and is passionate about it. That would be cool, but it is literally all she ever talks about. The band is having a discussion about how Rainbow hogs the limelight and even refuses Fluttershy's contributions, and out of nowhere Rarity is like, I made such great outfits, as if this would support Fluttershy's complaint somehow. Giving a big character a minor role requires limiting his or her appearance to just a slice of their personality. That slice, however, should be a fair representation and not something making the character look bad. What brings me to, last but not least, the one that even made it into the title of the movie itself, Rainbow Dash. Does she do anything in the movie she would not do in the series as well? Being obnoxious and self-centered, boasting all the time, being competitive or openly cheating? All that is her. Anybody shouting out of character here hasn't done their homework. But as with Rarity, we only get to see the worst of Rainbow. The Rainbow Dash we get to see in this movie honestly makes me wonder why the rest of the group even sticks with her. But from characters represented in an unworthy way to the one that stole the show. Number 1. As disappointed as I have been by Sunset Shimmer in the first movie, this time she was a constant joy to watch. Where to start? How she actually looks cute swaying to the music during the band practice, how Rebecca Choy-Klet's voice is extremely pleasant to listen to now that she ditched the high school mean girl tone, or how about that she incarnates the first well-executed, thought-through and realistic redemption arc in MLP, while it looked like she went through the usual last-minute redemption everything is cool now conclusion at the end of the first movie. Rainbow Rocks picks up the story and turns it into a meaningful arc. The remaining 5 are cool with Sunset now, but everybody else in school isn't. She has to face trust issues and constant remarks on her former actions throughout the movie. And when stuff goes south and Trixie accuses her of intentionally knocking out Rainbow Dash out of jealousy, none of her new friends is willing to jump to her defense. Considering that, you can understand why she is so quiet throughout the larger part of the movie, even so we can see her observe things going wrong and worrying. Haunted by her past, she is afraid it's not her place to speak up, and she might lose the little she's got by now. She does speak up as a last resort once everything seems to fall apart for good, and in the end, when she turns into a magical abomination of nature, it feels well deserved. Now where do we go from here? I actually discussed this question with Paleo, Saberspark and Tommy Oliver in a podcast over on Paleo's channel. I recommend checking it out. Nevertheless, here are my initial thoughts about the future of Equestria Girls. As far as I know, this franchise is going to continue in form of a TV show called Equestria Academy. Considering the end of Rainbow Rocks, I expect it to work out like this. As an MLP, we get a main cast consisting of 6 members. The human counterparts to the remaining 5, plus Sunset Shimmer as the leading protagonist, like Twilight and FIM. Sunset is going to write her friendship reports to Twilight, or maybe even ask for advice every now and then, since, let's face it, Twilight is a bit more approachable as a mentor than Celestia. I don't expect, or let's say I really hope it's not going to be the case, that Twilight will constantly come through the portal. After all, there might be a second Twilight hanging around Canternote High soon. And oh my god, her 2 seconds of screen time were the best. I have always been a fan of Twilight's mad scientist vibe, and it's also too fitting that a magical-less human version of her would be just that. And from the looks of it, it seems to directly answer one of my complaints. She's not taking all the weird magic happening at Canterlot High so casually. I assume her role in the show could be to obsessively try to uncover all the magical stuff and reveal it to the world, while the main cast has to cover everything up again. She would be some kind of an antagonistic role, not really a bad guy, and the main 6 would probably try to befriend her, but in order to stop science from taking over and dissecting magic, Sunset and co have to sabotage Twilight's research all the time. Well, guess we'll see how close my prediction comes to the real deal once Equestria Academy airs. Until then, this is AnYPony saying see you soon.
You can pick up the